What we'll do today is the theme for today is suffering, human suffering. And we'll take that briefly, and then we'll move into questions and try to get through as many as we possibly can. We then also have a special birthday celebration. When we think about suffering, I want to just begin by distinguishing between two words that tend to be used interchangeably and are yet very, very different. Pain and suffering. Pain is a physical experience. It's a physical response. If I touch my hand on a hot stove, long before my brain has actually registered any experience of what's happened, my hand has pulled back. The sensors in the skin in my hand have sent the message so quickly into my spinal cord, and it has sent messages so quickly back that my hand is off the stove before my brain has even registered what's happened. We injure ourselves, something happens. The body has pain receptors. When those receptors end up getting stimulated, we experience what we call pain. Suffering is the emotional component to it. And they're really important to distinguish because frequently they go together. We injure ourselves, there's pain in the body, but then there's also this feeling of, oh, why me? I was supposed to be in Hawaii or the south of France this week. Why did I get injured? So along with the broken arm, broken leg, kidney stone, whatever physical thing we may be going through, there's also the emotional aspect of suffering. And it's that I want to talk about today. Having a normal, natural, and expected response to pain is actually something very good for us. It's not something that we're trying to overcome. It's how our bodies know not to keep our hand on a hot stove. It's how our bodies know that this position I'm sitting in is not good for my hips or my back or my knees because slowly pain starts. It's a signal to us that says, change how you're sitting. Change how you're standing. Move the hand off the hot stove. So we're talking about suffering. And the reason that I begin with this distinction is that many of us take our suffering as though it's just as natural, just as scientific as pain. I didn't get into the university I wanted to go to. The person I love doesn't love me back. My friends no longer want to be friends with me. I'm suffering. But we take it almost as scientifically natural as we do the hand being pulled off the hot stove. And I want to talk today about what makes up suffering and how can we end it. Before we go into our own experience of suffering, we have to understand that there is suffering on earth. Which we have the ability to alleviate. Very few of us, probably none of us, by God's grace, have that experience. whether it's suffering due to hunger, whether it's suffering due to thirst, physical experiences, or whether it's suffering due to not being able to put your children in school, suffering not being able to provide your parents or your loved ones with medical care. Throughout so much of the world, that level of suffering exists, and it would be irresponsible on some level not to acknowledge that aspect of suffering. We all have the ability, whether through our time, through our talents, through our resources, to help those people overcome their suffering. Their suffering is not just an emotional state. And as much as we can, in whatever capacity we have, whatever resources we have, whatever experience or expertise we have, as we experience the oneness of creation, Pujya Swamiji spoke yesterday about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world as a family. And as we really start to experience that, well, their suffering becomes our suffering. And so we do what we can to alleviate their suffering. But our suffering, we suffer mostly, not due to lack of food, not due to lack of water, not due to not being able to provide our children with an education or provide our parents with health care. But most of us suffer simply because the world, the universe, and the people in it don't act the way we want them to. They cheat us, they betray us, they abandon us, they abuse us, they lie to us. And they do that especially when the suffering comes, especially when we feel like we've done nothing to deserve it. We've acted out of nothing but love and compassion and giving and generosity. And nonetheless, they've responded with betrayal, with abuse, physical, emotional. And this leads to great suffering in us. And there's a couple of aspects here that I want to just touch on. Aspect one is the aspect of that person. Let's assume that our analysis is correct. Let's assume that we really have been nothing but loving and compassionate and giving and caring. And that they really have responded just with abuse. Okay. Sadly, the universe is not, as I so frequently refer to, a vending machine. We expect that it should be. It would be nice if it were. With a vending machine, you walk up to it, you put in your money, you push the button for what you want, and assuming you put in the right amount of money, and you push the right button, whatever you want comes out. And we expect life to be like that. We put in caring, compassion, generosity, sacrifice, love. And we push the button for love, appreciation, caring, compassion, connection to come back. And instead, what comes out is abuse, emotional, physical, betrayal, cheating. And that's because the universe really sadly is is not a vending machine. The people in our lives have come into this world with their own karmic package. No one has woken up in the morning and said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to hurt you today. I'm going to cheat on you today. I'm going to betray you today. I'm going to abandon you today. I'm going to cause you to suffer today. No one plans like that. Because that would imply that somehow they actually were thinking about you when they woke up in the morning. No, people think about themselves. And this is the cause of suffering. Is to us, it's about us. They lied to us. They cheated on us. They betrayed us. They abused us. And it's never about us. It's always about them. People are moving through the world with their own karmic package and their own toolbox, as we say. And we've all got a toolbox. And our toolbox gives us the tools to respond skillfully to the situations that the world presents. And the world presents all of us with challenges, all of us with frustration, all of us with failure, all of us with loss. These are givens. If you're young and you haven't experienced them yet, don't worry, you will. This is the package deal of life. There's loss and there's gain. There's failure, there's success. This is what life is made of. But for us, we respond to what the world gives us based on the tools we have in our toolbox. If this morning when you went into the bathroom, the toilet didn't flush, and there weren't a beautiful, wonderful staff here to take care of it, and there weren't a plumber, and we're up to you. Well, you'd maybe pull off the top and see whether you had something, maybe the ball no longer was attached, and so you had to find something that could reattach that ball so that when you pushed it, it would go down and the water would come out. But if you open your toolbox, you open the cabinets, you open your suitcase, and you've got nothing to tie those two things together, you're not going to successfully be able to fix that toilet. And in our life, when we're presented with experiences, confusion, fear, failure, frustration, injuring of my own ego, all of the things that happen to us on a daily basis, we turn to our toolbox. And if we have in our toolbox compassion, patience, sacrifice, understanding, tolerance, discipline, then we're going to be able to respond to what life gives us skillfully. But if we don't, if in our toolbox all we have is anger, selfishness, grabbing and grasping, numbing, distraction, blaming, then that's all we have to respond to the world with. And this is how people hurt us. Not intentionally, not purposely, but simply because something in their life has come up that has presented them with a situation that they don't have the tools to handle effectively. And in using the tools that they have, They hurt us. So they get laid off at work. They're upset. They come home and yell at us, or they yell at the kids. They go out and drink. They go out and use drugs. They cheat on us. Okay, it wasn't that they woke up in the morning and said, how can I hurt my loved one? It was that a situation presented itself, getting laid off, maybe just getting scolded, maybe not getting the raise or the promotion, whatever it was. And we responded to that not skillfully. Because in my toolbox, there were not the tools of how to handle that failure, that loss, that injury to my ego. So when other people hurt us, it's really important. The antidote to suffering is compassion. The antidote to suffering is compassion. We have to understand that regardless of what someone else has done, they didn't do it about us. They did it about them. We were just in the wrong place at the wrong time and received the impact of that. They didn't have the tools in their toolbox to respond skillfully. And so what we try to do is we find in our hearts the compassion. Because if we take this cup and I fill it full of water, and I keep filling it, eventually it's going to overflow onto my fingers, and then it would overflow onto my lap and make me wet. But long before it overflows on my fingers or my lap, the cup has to be full. It's not going to overflow on my fingers or my lap until it actually is filled to the brim. And the same is true with pain. Whether we are young and in school, or older and in our relationships, whether those who hurt us are young children who are just bullying us, or our loved ones, in every single case, the pain that overflows onto us is only overflowing because they are full already of the pain. It would not overflow onto us if it were not already full in them. People who are happy, people who are in peace, overflow joy and peace. People who feel love overflow love. If pain and abuse and injury is what's overflowing from them onto those around them, you can be sure that their inner cup is full of the pain and the suffering. All we're getting is the overflow. And so the compassion comes from the awareness that, oh my God, your overflow pain has hurt me so much. I cannot even imagine what it must be like inside you. Because these drops that have overflowed from you onto me are still enough to make me feel like I'm drowning. I cannot even imagine what your inner experience must be if this is the overflow. So the antidote to suffering is compassion. An awareness that everyone in this world is doing the very best they can with whatever tools they have in their toolbox at any given moment. if there's a nail sticking out of the wall, and I open my toolbox and there's no hammer, and all I've got is a toothbrush, I'm going to try to whack that nail with my toothbrush. And I'm not going to be very skillful at it. Not because I didn't intend to be skillful, not because I didn't recognize that it's a nail that needs to be hammered, but I don't have it in me. And people who are whacking us literally in their lives and in our lives are doing it because they don't have the right tools. If they had patience, if they had compassion, if they had love, if they had understanding, in their toolbox, by all means, they'd be using it. And if they're whacking us with abuse, with insult, with betrayal, we can be sure that that's all they've got in their toolbox. And the last piece I want to mention about this is the suffering that we take inside of us. So we've talked about literal external suffering, hunger, thirst, poverty, subjugation. Then we've talked about suffering that's caused to us by others. Now our inner suffering. Our inner suffering is caused by how much we want others and the universe to give us what we think we need and we think we deserve. And since we can't change others, since others are not a vending machine and others only have a toolbox with what it's got in it, the only option we have is to change ourselves. How many people here have sulked or cried in a room by yourself? Anybody else? So there's a beautiful quotation that says, if you are miserable in a room by yourself, you can be pretty sure you're the cause. If you are miserable in a room by yourself, you can be pretty sure you are the cause. Our own attachment to how things should be doesn't mean we're wrong. You give love, we expect love in return. You give friendship, we expect friendship in return. You give loyalty, we expect loyalty in return. Doesn't mean we're wrong. But it's just matter-of-factly pointing out that my expectation of what I'm going to get based on what I've put in is the cause of my pain. The other person is just doing their karmic package, going through the world with their toolbox. How I am experiencing it, especially when I'm in a room alone, is based entirely on myself, which means that we can change ourselves. And this is where we need to work. And this is what we've been talking about all weekend, is if I don't need you to fill my holes, I'm not expecting you to fill my holes. I'm much more able to see how you've just reacted, how you've just spoken to me, what you've just done, with compassion and without suffering. The very last piece I want to mention is we've also been conditioned to suffer. And this is a very strange thing, but it's worth mentioning quickly. If I say to you, okay, there's a movie or TV show, a drama. And scene one is you've got a beautiful husband and wife and two beautiful children. And they're in a car. They're driving down the road. And the two children are singing lovingly in the back. And the husband and wife are holding each other's hands in the front seat. And they're driving down the road. End of scene one. Now I say to you, what's scene two? What's scene two? They get?
They get to the destination.
Oh. They get to the destination, yes. Not much of a movie then.
I live happily ever after.
This is, we laugh, and yet, what he actually said is exactly right. He took us there quickly. I was going to take us sort of via. Scene 2 and scene 3, in 99% of the cases they got to the destination. And yet, we laugh when he says it, because what comes to most of our minds? Some trauma. We don't have time to go around, but if I said to you, if I gave you just scene 1 and I said, now write down scene 2, and then we're going to go around and share. You tend to get everything ranging from a car accident to he confesses he's been having an affair, to turns out one of the kids has cancer, to a meteor falls on them, depending on how dramatic we want to be. But this is the stuff that our minds are made of. We've really been indoctrinated towards suffering. And the dilemma of this is that suffering comes anyway. Pain comes anyway. Loss comes anyway. Failure comes anyway. But how many of us, in the arms of a loved one, a mother, a child, a beloved, have been unable to fully enjoy the moment because our brain says to us, oh my God, what if something happens to them? Anybody else? Anybody have that experience? Yeah. So this is what happens. We're in the middle of a joyful moment, but we're unable to actually enjoy the moment, even though the moment is perfect. Because our minds are already with how long it's going to last. Oh my God, it's already 10:20. We've only got another couple hours left. Oh my God. Or oh my God, they're growing up so fast. Oh my God, eventually one of us is going to die. Oh my God. We can't even be in this moment without bringing suffering to it. And that is fully in our control. And that's why I wanted to end with this piece. What's going on in the Middle East, in Iraq, and Syria, is almost entirely out of most of our control, sadly. We can pray. We can spread as much love as we can. But on a logistic basis, it's really out of most of our control of those of us sitting in this room. And we move slowly from that along the spectrum of control. How much control do we have over layers of suffering? And we come into the parts over which we have a great deal of control. We end into the part over which we have full control. There is nothing in this moment to cause suffering, and everything to cause joy. But my own mind is so unable to be in the presence of full joy that I've created suffering where it doesn't even yet exist. So when we leave from here, you go back, I want you to go back with the awareness that pain is there in the world, but suffering is our own suffering is our choice. Whether it's in response to what someone else has already done, how they're being, or whether it's in response to something that hasn't even happened yet. Our own mind, our own way of thinking about it, our own conception is what changes pain into suffering, should it be a physical situation, and just experience into suffering. Yeah, loss is there, failure is there, betrayal is there, abandonment is there. But how much I suffer from that is up to me. How much was I expecting that person or that situation to fill my holes, to dance according to my tune, is the level of which I'm going to suffer. And so we slowly change our own perception and bring as much compassion as we can for ourselves, because it wasn't wrong to expect, it wasn't wrong to hope, it wasn't wrong to want. And yet, when that's not what comes out of the vending machine, we have to have enough compassion for ourselves to allow ourselves to be full and be healed and be whole and move on.